The most outstanding image of this attack was, of course, the attack on the World Trade Center, because, after the collision with the planes, the well-known Twin Towers caught fire. Thousands of people were trapped on the highest floors of the building and unfortunately were unable to get out, while firefighters and first responders conducted the evacuation work of the building. The impact of the planes and the fire of the World Trade Center to collapse a few minutes later. The fire that broke out in the Twin Towers overheated the building's structures and caused both to collapse. At 9:59, the South Tower collapsed. At 10:58, it was the turn of the North Tower. Their fall affected buildings on the side, damaging them and spreading fire. Before the attack, the World Trade Center was a complex that had 7 buildings that housed hundreds of companies from various areas. Within this complex were the Twin Towers, inaugurated in 1973, and which were 417 meters high, being one of the tallest vertical buildings in the world. On the day of the attack, about 15,000 people were in them, and, in the midst of despair, many of these, cornered by fire, threw themselves from the floors where they were.
Die niet te overleven viel boven de Vlammenzee. Drew maakte een iconische foto die de vallende man wordt genoemd. De springers werden ook vastgelegd door televisiecamera's.
As mentioned, the attack was carried out by Al-Qaeda, which at the time was led by Osama bin Laden. However, the big name who planned the details of the attacks was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the exponents of the fundamentalist group. Both bin Laden and Khalid were behind other attacks against the United States. Bin Laden was involved in the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Kenya in 1998. And Khalid was involved in the car bomb attack that destroyed the entrance to the World Trade Center in 1993. Bin Laden was killed in 2011. And Khalid has been eventually imprisoned under U.S. jurisdiction since 2003. After the attacks, the reaction of the U.S. government was immediate and focused on tightening security measures in the country, with a great focus on airports and on reprisals against their perpetrators. The U.S. rematch took place through the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. The invasion of Afghanistan was authorized by the then President of the United States, George Walker Bush, and had 2 goals: to capture Osama bin Laden and overthrow the Taliban, the group that had ruled that country since the 1990s, for having assumed on video that he was the author of the attacks. The United States sought to overthrow the Taliban because this fundamentalist government group harbored Al-Qaeda on its territory. With the invasion of Afghanistan, the U.S. began a phase of what became known as the War on Terror, which included the invasion of Iraq 2 years later, in 2003. The Taliban government was defeated. But the situation in Afghanistan never stabilized. Osama bin Laden was killed by American troops in his Pakistan hideout in 2011. On the issue of security, the Americans reinforced the fight against terrorism in the country through a law known as the Patriot Act. This law was in force until 2015 and allowed the government to intercept phone calls and messages without having to obtain authorization from the court, for example. In addition, on the issue of flight safety, new rules were approved, making passenger boarding extremely strict. As of 2015, the anti-terrorism legislation in the United States underwent changes and was renamed the USA Freedom Act. At 8:45 a.m. on September 11, 2001, Brian Bernstein was sitting at his desk at the investment bank Lehman Brothers. The office was on the 38th floor of World Trade Center 1. At that moment, you have meters above him, a plane crashed into the building, at the height of the 85th floor. It was the beginning of the terrorist attack, but Bernstein, of course, knew nothing at the time. He is one of thousands who managed to escape with their lives from the attack where about 40,000 people worked. Now with 30 years old, Bernstein says the attack changed his life. He is no longer afraid of death or terrified of horror movies. He still works at Lehman Brothers, where he is a technology manager, but the office has moved to the Times Square area. In an interview, he recounted how he escaped with his life and what he thinks of discussions about what to do with Ground Zero, following Brian Bernstein's testimony. I had a meeting at 7:30 a.m. and I was there a little earlier because I had to prepare. The office was not full until 9:15 a.m., when people started to show up. I had been sitting at my desk for about 15 minutes, nothing, there was a boom. The building shook a lot. It was like a person taking you by the shoulder and shaking you. The first thing that came to my mind was the 1993 bomb, another terrorist attack on the building. Then it crossed my mind that could hit it so high. Then something that could have been a gas explosion at the top of the building. I immediately thought, is this going to fall? When I realized it didn't, I looked out the window and saw thousands of sheets of paper and metal falling from the sky. Emergency happens. The stairs were 2 people wide. There was water coming down from above. It was surprisingly calm because we didn't know what had happened yet. Someone said, a plane hit the building, but of course nobody could confirm it. The craziest thing I saw was a woman who had a little store 2 floors up saying she had left the cash register open. I told her, I don't think anyone will pick it up. At some point smoke started to appear on the stairs, not much, a little. Some people covered their mouths, but I was okay. It was the 9th floor. The firefighting system went off. A little further along, we found the firefighters coming in. So we had to lean against the side of the stairs to let them go. They looked worried. It took me about 25 minutes to get down. It was an exit in the lobby, and I was looking at the square, where that metal globe was. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. Smoke. It looked like Armageddon. It was weird. There were things burning on the floor. It was a beautiful day that day. There was a lot of glass falling. I still had no idea about the other building. When I got to the door, I stopped for a second, I took a breath, and ran as fast as I could because I didn't want to get hit by anything. When I was further away, I stopped and looked at the entrance to the WTC and saw several people who jumped from the top falling to the ground. Someone yelled, "Oh my God. It's a person." When I was between Bleecker Street, I used to live in the West Village, and 7th Avenue, the first building fell. There were screams. I ran to the avenue and I asked, what happened? I went to 6th Avenue. I was talking to someone who worked with me, and then we saw the second building fall. I started driving through the city, and someone was in the car with the radio on. That's when I heard that the Pentagon had also been hit. Happened, one or the other. 2 people called me names because I got away and I didn't help anyone, I said. I didn't find anyone who needed my help. They saw it as someone who had to be there the next day. There were a lot of actions taken in the name of the attack. But you never know if what we're told is really true, and there were a number of things that passed in Congress, like the Patriot Act, anti-terror measures that restrict civil liberties, which were, in some measure, invasion of privacy. Of course, there are positive and negative things about it, but that kind of thing would never have happened before events like this. I say I'm not afraid of death anymore, I've been too close to it. Someone in the last few seconds before hitting the ground and there's nothing left, it changes your perspective. Horror movies that would have made me gnash my teeth don't scare me anymore. It took 10 years for Adriana Melendez to return to embracing life, after almost losing it. Survivor of the attacks of September 11, 2001. When two planes piloted by terrorist of Osama bin Laden collided with the World Trade Center in New York, the native from Parana was at the peak of her career. Fulfilling commitments on the city and staying at the Marriott Hotel World Trade Center, one of 7 buildings in the complex, located between the two towers. When fleeing, she fell and was trampled, which left physical sequels existing to this day. In addition, for a long time, Adriana was guilty of having survived the attacks, which killed 2,996 people.